Hi, this is Professor Cordes, and this is the Week 4 lecture video for English 113 Composition. This week, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing evaluation writing. We are looking at how do you clearly articulate an evaluation style while still having a set of criteria in which you base upon your evaluation. This is a different form than obviously memoir. It's a different form than profile, because what we have to pull out and manifest are these lists of criteria, these lists of rules, these lists of ideas that we have for when we evaluate something. So you and I, we're very good at evaluating things rather quickly after an experience or after an interaction. So you may walk out of a restaurant and say like, oh my gosh, that was the worst experience. Oh my gosh, that was so great. You may do the same when you walk out of the movie theater. That movie was horrible. That movie was fantastic. Like, you begin to evaluate based upon a certain set of criteria that you have, which is based upon previous experience. Okay. So what you do there is, and this is going to take some thought for us this week, is once you've figured out the item in which you are evaluating, you have to step back and understand, well, how am I evaluating that? How am I determining whether this is good or bad? And what past experiences and lists of check marks do I have that kind of feed into the decision that I made about that evaluation? So let me first go through the assignment right here. You'll see it's up on the week 4 learning activities. It's a formalized version of something that has already been a part of your life. So it's the evaluation. You do want this to be more of a formal type writing than like a personal narrative. And what I mean by that was, when you did the memoir, that was very personal. The evaluation should have a little bit more of an academic tone, less vocabulary words like me and I, but more kind of a neutral stance for the item that you're evaluating. Okay. Yes, it is still personal to you, but you still want to kind of obtain a objective viewpoint. So looking here, if you struggle on thinking of an experience or something, then just go to something, just go to an item that would be very familiar to you, or something that you've recently experienced within the past couple of weeks. We are increasingly in a culture of evaluation. We choose an event that you've got 3 pages to write about. This evaluation should be a perspective, explicitly trying to convince the reader of something about that subject. You are trying to kind of offer your reader, hey, this is how I'm going to evaluate it based upon this criteria. So if you look here, that we actually included this, the OPS school included this in the instructions. In turn, your professor, I'm going to evaluate your essay based upon the clear defined criteria. So if you look at the rubric, this is how I'm grading you. This is what would get me to a point where I said, this is a good essay, this is a bad essay. And I begin to identify how is their completeness of the project, grammar and style, writing style. Do they have well-supported reasons? Do they have fair and balanced assessment of the item that they are critiquing? Do they have knowledge of the subject? Is there a clear defined criteria? What are the key points that you are, saying that this is good or bad? Oftentimes when we talk to kids and you ask them about an experience, you're like, hey, what did you think? And they're like, oh, it was bad. I didn't like it. And then you ask why. Sometimes it's hard for them to articulate it. So they might say, well, I just didn't like it. Well, they haven't been able to pull that criteria to the front of their brain to say like, oh, well, last time I had this experience, it was better. Last time I did this, X, Y, and Z happened as well, and that didn't happen this time. So you begin to evaluate that. A concise description of the subject. Like, that's how I'm critiquing you. So I'm taking a step back and looking at your evaluation writing and looking at those components and seeing, okay, yes, this is good. Yes, this is bad. That's how I'm evaluating your work. If you guys do the pre-writing, one of the tasks is, after you do the tasks, it actually is going to be good to step back and look at everything to say like, I think I can see the criteria in which I'm evaluating my work on. I can see that X, Y, and Z makes this holistic. So you begin to step back. Let me give you an example. I am a big Wizard of Oz fan. Um, the Magic of Oz was the first book that I remember staying up late with a flashlight with the, covers over, and I was reading it. Out of the 13, 14 Oz books, Magic of Oz is towards the very end. But I've always been enthralled with those books. Very whimsical. I just love those stories. And as time has progressed, I've loved watching the mythology of Oz. So you've got Return to Oz in the 80s. You've got, Wicked, which was a completely different tangent. You've got all these things. Well, early back in 2000s, the Great and Powerful Oz film came out, which was supposed to be kind of like a sequel to the Oz stories. And I remember walking out, and all of my friends wanted to know. They're like, "Hey, what'd you think? You love this. You love The Wizard of Oz. What do you think?" And I was able to tell them my evaluation of the film based upon my knowledge of all of the stories, based upon how the film was done and the story development, based upon what connected and what did it. And so there's this idea of I had background knowledge already, right? I wrote my master's thesis on The Wizard of Oz. Okay. I know these stories. And so to see another story and see where it matched up and then where it didn't, and then to see how they did character development, there were qualities that were great. There were qualities that I loved. And then there were things that I was like, based upon the criteria of pre-existing characters, a timeline based upon, the world that has been created, that would be equivalent to someone coming, like for me, I think I said something along these lines. I remember saying like some of it doesn't match up with the world that's already been created. And so what I'm trying to articulate, the criteria was X, Y, and Z needed to be a part of that world that was already established. So whether you're going to critique your film, whether you're going to critique an experience, maybe a church service, whatever it is, you kind of have to stop and pull back to say like, okay, what am I evaluating this on? What's the criteria? And almost come up with a list. What was in the past experience that did it? Like, was the quality of work good? I know a lot of people who will go to do a workout, like a high intensity type training workout, and immediately begin to evaluate, oh, that wasn't good. Oh, I didn't like that workout. Oh, that was horrible. But they evaluate it based upon what they're able to do. They're based upon their skill level. They kind of evaluate based upon the past workouts. So you begin to evaluate on so much criteria. It's going to be important for you, just like this is here, to come up with that list. Okay. And that's the part where you're kind of informing about this subject. You're offering, hey, this movie was okay, but not the greatest. Here's why, based upon this set of criteria. You could walk out of a Marvel movie, a superhero Marvel movie, and say, oh yeah, this was not good because you connected, it didn't have this component that these movies have. All superhero movies should be connected in this way or have this idea, and that wasn't presented. This plot hole didn't match up, and therefore I kind of lost interest in the story. My son watched a movie and he's like, Dad, this doesn't make sense because they never come back and talk about it again. Like he found a plot hole in this film that he was watching. And I was like, well, yeah, that's good. He also does the same thing. He's a big Percy Jackson fan, and he will sit there and he'll say like, well, Dad, the book does this, but the movie does that. And he begins to evaluate. The movie should have done this and this and this because the book has this and this. So he begins to evaluate based upon the criteria that the book contains more of the story. So you guys are going to be doing the same. Okay. Please, if you are stuck as far as what your criteria is or even your experience, send me an email. I'll help you out. We'll kind of begin to unpack it all. I guarantee you, let me scroll up here for you. I guarantee you when you go through these readings, it'll become a little bit more clear. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this moment in time because I just feel like I'm repeating myself. And I don't want to do that for you guys. So the readings are going to help clear things up. If you're still confused or don't know what to evaluate, send me an email. We'll talk about it and we'll unpack things. If you don't know what your criteria is going to be, we'll unpack that as well. So if you pick, I don't know, a church service, we'll unpack what is in the church service that should have been there, what wasn't. Was it done differently? Was it how did it flow? How did it connect? Like we'll unpack it. The grammar journal, the pre-writing activity is going to help you unpack things as well. So if you get to day 5, and you're like, oh, I'm struggling, I don't think, send me an email, we'll talk, we'll figure it all out. Okay. If for whatever reason you do need a brain break from your evaluation writing, go ahead and go to your grammar journal. Look at the critiques that have been done. Look at 1 or 2 items from this handbook that you think that you need to improve upon, showing your previous examples, showing how you would fix them, how you would modify them. This is always a good brain break. I love that OPS adds these in there because it does kind of help us switch our brains. Let me relax for a second from evaluation writing. Let me look at grammar. Okay, I'm done with grammar. Let me go back to this. So it helps us keep our brains on its toes, so to speak. Excuse me. Too much coffee this morning. So that's what we have right now for week 4. I have talked enough. Go ahead and get started on your work. Email me if you have any questions or concerns. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with and evaluate for this week.